effective products.
Global energy systems, food systems, and supply chains will be deeply affected.
5G is going to underpin the digital economy.
Central bank digital currencies.
Individual carbon footprint tracker.
I don't want you to be hopeful. I want you to panic.
We can hack human beings.
The time is right for an international treaty or other legally binding instrument.
Free will, that's over.
Hello, welcome to Truth Lens. Myself, Chris Lipthorpe, with Carly Spell, otherwise known as Jill, or Eve. What's your other name?
I've got a few. It gets confusing. I don't mind either, but there's explanations for them all. But yeah, my real name's Jill, but people call me Carly because that's how I was known from the beginning. You know, 3 or 4 years ago. You know, so I really don't mind. Whichever resonates, I say. You know. Yeah,
I remember you as Carly because I first knew of you from Carly. So I mean, there's a lot of big names that we need. Well, big names. Okay, let me start. So welcome to Truth Lens, where I speak to special guests, people that I'm really interested to hear from, and we've been listening. We've been having guests come and speak live at the Porcupine and the Billingham Synthonia for about 2 years now. Unfortunately, Carly couldn't come this time, so it's about time I started doing live streams anyway. So it's welcome, Carly, to Truth Lens.
Hi, Chris. Thank you for having me. I know we had a chat, didn't we, last week, and we kind of just got to know each other a bit. So hopefully people will find this interesting. If not, put it in the cyber bin, as I say. But yeah, I some people may know me, some people may not. I've been kind of hopping around the I say the law movement or alternative law, but there's nothing alternative about it. It's just us starting to begin.
Right. Yeah. So I can't hear you now. So when you drop, I'll kick in.
Let me know.
So we generally talk about things like freedom and awakening and you know what people might call, I don't know, I won't even mention it, right? But we believe we're just exploring the truth, not necessarily what is in the mainstream. Now, Carly, please, the main thing that I'm interested to know about with you is like, how do we assert ourselves in the law to be what we should be, you know, living men and women. And okay, so I'm going to let you have the floor now, and I'm not interrupt. So please, introduce yourself and just go straight into a dialogue, and I'll try not to interrupt you, and I'll watch out for.
No, that's fine.
Okay, over to you then.
Yes. Oh, yes. There's no pressure. I was laughing, weren't I, with you last week? I was saying. Usually I'll do a talk, but it's with a PowerPoint and I'll just ramble on for hours. So I suppose, I'll introduce myself. My name's Carly Spell. I would say that my name isn't, actually Carly Spell. My name is Jill. But I kind of, I was on Facebook and I got removed, for community standards, I was running some of the law groups on there at the time, the pandemic hit, say 3-4 years ago. So some people may be aware of who I am, some may not. I'm a trained yoga teacher. That's what I did 3 years ago. Oh, have you gone? Oh, he's gone.
No, I'm still here.
Carry on. It's still there. So yes, I took the Carly for my yoga business, Carly Yoga Genesis, and the spell because I'm into etymology and the law of the law, I suppose, as I say, LORE. The law of the law. So yeah, there's nothing nefarious about my Carly, even though she is the goddess of destruction and the goddess of time. But as we know, we are in the age of destruction. That's what the Yuga is. So that's what we're kind of seeing outside. We are as above, so below. So I suppose in that sense, like we were talking about, Chris, I do take a very kind of I like to deep dive the occult in the law and the esoteric, shall we say. The occult just means hidden. I did an interesting interview with a guy called Arthur Christian, and he says the occult is a cult in itself. It's all construct, really. And I suppose that's kind of hopefully what I bring to people. The law in itself is a construct. It's all construct. And when you kind of understand that, we talk about natural law. For me, obviously we've got the, the common law, no harm, no injury, no loss, which is the common law of the land. But also natural law, as Mark Passio would say, if you never heard of Mark Passio, check him out. Mark Passio. Yeah. So he talks about theft. And that's how, and being sovereign really is starting to, practice what you preach, really. No piece of paper can make you sovereign. Pieces of paper is legal, it's form. That's what legal means. It means form, it's paperwork. The court, people think, is a big building with, the dock in it. But the court is the court of record, it's the paperwork. Basically, we were all enslaved, or would have been physical slaves historically. And then they just found a way, to make us slaves on paper, which would have been kind of like the Khazarian traders of old, really, the fake 12 tribes, the Zionist Jews, which, again, if you know your history and you study a bit of genealogy to where we came from, which is Canaanites, the Canaanites of old. They were called the Scythians of, they were Eurasian nomads and slave traders, really. They call us the Guayim, the cattle, the stock. So again, for me, I suppose I just try and illuminate. My group on Telegram is called Illuminate and Elevate. So my goal was always to shine a light on that darkness of that system. And I've got a law degree, so I'm LLB honours. I never went on to be a practicing solicitor, and that's a bit of a myth. I went to go to be a solicitor. I didn't complete it because I saw through it. The system wants its minions, it doesn't teach you the truth. It doesn't even teach you equity, really. It touches on it. But obviously solicitors, barristers, you're in statutory jurisdiction there. So again, people need to kind of really have a grasp on jurisdiction. That's key. People kind of miss that one. Jurisdiction, juris, again, in the words, juris means law, diction means words. It's law words. And when you understand Black's law, black is coloured, and coloured in legalese is counterfeit, then you can start to understand that Black's law, my computer's sat on my Black's law dictionary there for a bit of lift. It's a book of black spells, it's a book of black magic, and that's ultimately what we find ourselves in. These Canaanites of old, it's Baal worship, and it's the Baal system, the three crowns of Baal, which is the crown, which is the triple crown, which is the Vatican, which is Rome.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, I was just thinking, like animals don't have laws, do they? What makes us different to animals and the rest of the world that we see outside of ourselves? Is it to do with words?
Language is trickery. It's a con. The system loves its cons, its contracts, its constitutions, its confinements, its coffins. It's everything is a structure in the system. Everything is there and designed to box us in. It's here to box in our consciousness, but it's here to physically box us in. Hence your 15-minute cities. Hence that, you are your pronouns. You are, everything's a label and everything's a construct, really. So it's a really good point that you bring up, because again, talking to Arthur about this, in the end, it is about what we can sense. You don't need to tell a dog how to be a dog, do you? A dog just instinctively knows. So we're given all these third-party narratives, and we're given all these constructs to box us in, to define us, to constantly keep us further and further away from our true natures, from our true selves. And I don't genuinely believe that humans are warlike. A friend of mine, Johnny, who does the Dark Matters podcast with me, he'll say, he's, my friend Caroline and Johnny, the Native American Indians, they didn't even have words for prison or school or war, So these are things that were given, to us. And I'm not saying that tribes didn't argue with each other, but there was no, people weren't chemically dependent, people weren't drug addicts, people weren't having addictions. There was community, there was family, there was being in commune with nature. And that's what's been taken as well. And this hijack of our consciousness is what creates the matrix. We all think that perhaps the matrix is something outside of ourselves, but it's the hijacking of our consciousness, because we project and we create. So we will create what we see. So they control the narrative. They get us constantly, not being in the present moment and being sensory, like you say, like to nature. which is only the real constant. And they give us traps, and they give us boxes, and they box us in. And the legal and the lawful system, even law itself, it's a construct, because when you're truly sovereign, you don't need somebody to tell you what to do. Nobody can confer a right upon you, Chris. I can't give you rights. You can't give me rights. This idea of human rights, we've all got human rights. Well, hue of man in legalese means, colour of man, and colour is counterfeit. So, it's not natural. There's nothing natural that's derived from it. And when we kind of start to untie that knot in our head, that's becoming sovereign, really. But it is a key to the kingdom, and the kingdom is within, so not everybody's ready for it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, Carly, I like that we've gone right into a lot of depth right from the start. But let's just move back out a little bit. And
you'll find it a bit difficult for me not to swim in deep waters, me, Chris.
Yeah, no.
I'll try my best, though.
No, I suppose that's what my job is supposed to be. You
can rein me in.
Can we think of some like examples of today where we are really, really imprisoned, and we probably don't even realize we are? I'm thinking, like, for example, all of these demands that are made, financial demands and mobility demands that and medical biosecurity demands that we find ourselves in. What are some practical things that the awakening people can bring into our lives to deal with all of that? Can you think of any good examples?
Well, I mean, I would say that the meme that I tend to give people now, after studying this stuff for 15-hour days and being awake for over 20 years, is if you've got assets, you want to know about private trusts. You want to start to learn about splitting legal and equitable title to protect those assets, and to protect yourself, really. The trusts are a system that the elites have used for thousands of years to protect their assets, to pass assets over, without having to, the elites don't pay, the elites don't pay taxes. They don't pay inheritance taxes. So, these things there's nothing dodgy about them. This is just us learning what those back doors are in those system. And you've got to kind of learn about equity, really, equity and trust. Now, equity is a higher body of law, as we say. It's the spiritual element of the law. So equity, there's 10 equitable maxims, and one of them is equity will seek to do what ought to have been done. So again, you've got to kind of learn a little bit, perhaps, to empower yourself about jurisdictions. The jurisdiction that we will find ourselves in as a peon or a pauper or a slave, a paper slave, a fiction, as the dead fiction, is statutory jurisdiction, statutes and acts. If you have, we've been signed into that system, your mother gives her power of attorney away ultimately. She's not signing you away, of course, but this is the system. She's signing a piece of paper. It's a certified copy of an entry, as Carl would say, who does the limited company process. And that's another process that works to separate you, to take you off the jurisdiction of the United Kingdom PLC and put you back onto the land. So it's this kind of like an inner standing of where you're stood or not, really. As the living man wants to be, operate from the private and stand on the land, whereas the fiction operates in statutory jurisdiction and is in the laws of the sea. So, when you can kind of make that distinction and that separation, then you can start to, like I say, if you've got assets, actually the birth certificate is a share certificate ultimately. So if you can learn how to utilize it correctly, it's actually an asset to you. So in equity you have with your birth bond, what we call if you're working in trust and the birth certificate is a trust in and of itself, then you have the higher claim. So again, like a practical example is use trusts and trust law to protect your assets. The same systems that the elites use, we can use them. And there's people in my site, Dark Matters, who I trust. Yeah. There's that key word. Who do you trust to set up the trust? But the other side of it for me is banking. When we understand banking, then we understand everything, really.
Sorry to interrupt. I'll just sort of slow things down so that I comprehend it, and I think comprehend this. When we're talking about trust, well, to put something in trust, we need people that we know we can trust. That's one thing.
Yeah.
And if we don't have that, then by default, the trust is the state, the government. Is that right?
Yeah, that's it. So if you're holding both the legal and the equitable title, then say you stop paying your council tax, but you own, we don't really own our property. We don't actually own anything. Again, actually the beneficial use of in equity is the higher claim. So if you've got the use of, but you're still holding the legal title, say you say you want to challenge the legality of your council tax, and I'm not suggesting anybody stops paying the council tax. This isn't legal or financial advice, entertainment purposes only. But if you did want to, say you did do that, the council can sneakily, say for an example, put a charge on your property by looking you up at the land registry and people, and I hate to say it because I deal with them on a weekly basis, but people getting themselves into trouble where they have stopped paying the council tax. The council tax is a machine in the public sense. It's going to keep coming after you unless you're going to give it teeth and take them into a court, really, or you're creating that court on paper and you're challenging it contractually. But what I'm saying is they can sneakily let that charge, if it gets over 5,000, say for example, build up and slap a charge on your property. So when you come to sell that property, you might think you've beat the council, but you're gonna have to, they'll come and claim it another way because you've got that asset. Now say if you've put your property into a private trust, you then you can be the beneficiary of that trust, but you're not holding the legal title. You can hold the legal title as well. There's other ways to do it, but I don't set up trusts. But that's kind of basically the way to do it. You can put your car into a trust because, like you said then, Chris, the government is holding, say the DVLA. You see, the DVLA. Your car is in their jurisdiction, it's in their trust. Your birth certificate, it's with the general registrar. That's a trust in of itself. So it's the general registrar is the trustee, basically. And it's the same with, the land registry. The land registry is the trustee. So you basically, you're moving it out of their jurisdiction. And again, like we said earlier, juris, law, diction, words. It's all law words. And then you're basically taking that power away from them to be able to do that, if that makes sense.
Yes. So I'm sure there's a lot of people at different phases of taking back their power and control, and time in the past there may have been no reason why we shouldn't trust our government, our elders, our government, and people like that, because they were looking after us, and we trusted them to look after us. But we're more and more are finding that maybe they don't really know as much as they claim that they know. So we're following. There's 3 levels of law that we're following. There's these legislations which come through Parliament. There's the police and the military will follow those, and then there's this contract which stands above that, and then there's equity which is above that. Are they the 3 basic levels? Plus, I mean, there's a natural law and what are creators above that, I guess. But what are the levels of law?
So basically, like I say, if you're carrying a passport, if you've got a driving license, birth certificate, bank account, then and you're saying that you are that all caps name, then you are in the jurisdiction, statutory jurisdiction, and statutory jurisdiction trumps the common law in that effect, because there was an act called the Judicature Act, which I think was in 1883, but don't quote me. And the Judicature Act basically merged all the lower courts. So basically, what that means is statutory jurisdiction will trump it. More things that most people find themselves in, on day-to-day basis are going to be things in administrative courts, which actually have no legitimacy whatsoever. They're operating outside of the rule of law of a true public, like a high court where you're going to be in 12, a jury of your peers, and say you've committed a crime, then there's harm, injury, or loss. Well, then there's a victim, isn't there? Whereas legal is about gilder. It's about money, really. Guilty or not guilty. It comes from the Dutch word gilder. So there's something to be paid. And as a debtor, and in statutory jurisdiction, and as a fiction, as a peon, you're going to walk into statutory jurisdiction and you're going to pay. Solicitors are just there to design, create controversy, so they get paid. So you say if it's like you're going to get fined, or a speeding fine, or whatever it is. But again, the Bill of Rights, we're all equal, all are equal under the law. Yeah, these are superior statutes. The councils don't have any authority to issue fines. Councils, as we know, what they're doing is they're making an agreement with the clerk of the court, and they're just rubber stamping, their own documents, which they have, again, no authority to do. I think it's, was it Lord Denning? Was it Denning? Halsby's a Lord. Yeah, well, basically, like I said, they've no authority whatsoever, and no act, nothing can be passed to legitimise these courts. They're places of human trafficking. So equity is basically a body of law that basically developed to mitigate the harshness of statutory jurisdiction or common law. So equity was always where people would petition the king, and he gave that, historically. He gave that duty over to the chancellor. So if people were being treated unfairly, the king would have kind of the final say over it. He could kind of supersede, the common law, really. So that's kind of how equity developed as a body of law. And then the chancellor took over that role because the king didn't want to be doing it all the time, in simple terms. So now that's, this equity operates in the Court of Chancery. But again, it's a higher jurisdiction because lower jurisdictions that, like I say, for most things, most people find themselves in, it's about fining people. If there's no victim, if you're doing 33 in a 30 zone, well, then they're taking you into an administrative court, and they're saying that, there's, it's not, the speeding camera can't come in and testify, can it, Chris? Because there's no victim, there's no injured party. In civil cases, it would be classed as a tort. If you cause harm, injury, or loss in a civil case, well, there's still a loss, but there's no loss in administrative courts. It's about this. It's about revenue and generating revenue, and of course, as we know, as they move us through these courts. Yes. It's about pilfering our bonds, because they want that, they want the joinder, they want to be able to access your trust. So they win all ways. They get paid and you pay. So it's kind of understanding the different levels of it.
Yeah. So these are offers to contract, and they're very intimidating as well, aren't they? So these courts, you go there, they're quite scary places, and you get these bills that say you have £1,000 fine, blah blah blah. They're very intimidating, and but these are just offers of contract. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first jurisdiction, there's three that the judge can kind of play in these courts, basically. The first is commercial law, as you've just stated. It's all commerce and contract. The government is incorporated, and all governments worldwide, bar one or two. I think there was 3 left, and that was a couple of years ago, and I think that's even less now. So the first jurisdiction is, the judge is the landowner. Second jurisdiction is maritime, where he's the banker, see judge, see banker in legalese, that's 2. And then 3 is Talmudic law, where he becomes a high priest of Baal, you see. So if you can get him to basically, you move them from the first jurisdiction, they will actually physically leave. I've not done this, so I just know this. This is, saying it and doing it are 2 different things. I've met a few people who have, but as a rule of thumb, you don't really want to go into the jurisdiction. You don't want to go into the courts. Trust me, I've done it and I've failed. And that was, go humbly before the law, I'd say, or just don't go in at all, because they're private places of businesses. That's as simple as it is. The judge is just the janitor at McDonald's. They have no more authority over you than I do. So that's why they want your signature. That's why they want the contract. I mean, ultimately, it's statutory rape, because we're all being forced into commercial contracts. And ultimately, it boils down to this. Our gang's bigger than your gang, But we can rebut, we can serve notice, we can do affidavits. There is remedy and there is process depending on what the issue is. So these things are to be learned. If you want to, but learning a little bit about jurisdiction and learning about the different layers of how the judge can come in and out of a court. And like I say, he'll literally walk out and change a pair of his pants. He'll literally walk in and wear a different sash, and they don't have to leave the court to bring in the different jurisdictions, and these administrative courts, like I say, the Halsby's laws, they've, we haven't even got a sovereign anymore. We've just got a head of state. There's no monarch. We have a head of state now and a state contract. So everything is, has dissolved back to the crown. And people think that the crown is, the monarch or the head of state, but the crown is, is the Vatican. The 3 triple crowns of Baal, which is obviously, they took away our rights to the land, to our own bodies and to our souls, under the unum sanctum and the beat's gone on. So we're paper slaves, really, and we're debt slaves, which is, I focus a lot, in my groups on debt, on removing the shackles of debt from people's necks, hopefully. I'm no one, stop answer for everything. And that's the side that we have at Dark Matters. My goal there is, if I can't do it, and, trust me, there's lots of things I can't do, but I tend to focus, like, say, credit offsets, debt collectors, debt, mortgage, stuff like that. But there'll be other people who specify in trust law, like, good friend of mine who's in Dark Matters and has their own space in there. We're going to be doing some free lives in there to discuss all this stuff and people's options. So people, I'm sure you'll put the links down, and people want to come and join up. It's a private, site, but you just join in, and there's all kinds of awesome stuff in there, and it's building. Because I'm focusing on more like the podcast and getting, but yeah, there is remedy, and it always depends on what the issue is. Always the case, but having a good awareness of how that system operates is your basis.
So really, the basics, so that we're not totally slaves. We do have to respect that these systems have been built up for hundreds, thousands of years, and there's a basic administration thing, which is, but by default it's probably okay. But it's okay for us to challenge that when we feel that there's something wrong here, and there is remedy. So we don't have to automatically obey everything. Is that right? If we feel it's wrong.
Yeah, this is the thing, if you think that you are that piece of paper, if you think that you are that all caps name, and you're going to kind of identification, you're going to identify yourself as that piece of paper, then you're in their jurisdiction, and there's 2 realms, public and private. There's actually 3, public, private and secret. So, these companies, these corporate entities, and they're all corporate entities, your governments are, everything that you're dealing with is now, like we say, contract and commerce. So, they're going to, corporate, corp dead, orate speak, and the dead need to speak to the dead. They can't speak to the living. But like I said earlier, if you're carrying that birth certificate, if you're holding all these titles, in their system, then you are classed as their property. Until you rebut it or you say otherwise, So most things that kind of come through, on an everyday basis through people's doors, as long as you're not going around, murdering anybody, but then there's a victim, that's a crime. So most things they're trying to, they send us to our jobs, which means persecution, first book of Job, to earn money, again, more language of the dead. Money is actually, we don't have money anymore. We just got fiat currency too. So to earn fiat fake currency, fiat means fake in legalese, to be taxed 93% of the pound, it is now. I think it used to be 85 and someone told me it's 93 because of inflation, to give it them back. And the little bit that they leave us with, well, you park somewhere you shouldn't, that's a fine. You do 31 in a 30 zone, or maybe 33, I think, is it percentage wise? Well, then we'll fine you. You fart sideways now, we'll fine you, so etc. and so on. So there are ways to have, like, say, permanent status correction changes. I know people have gone down, say, like, done the UCC1 filing statements, things like that. There's Carl, who does the limited company process. So, he's basically say like the birth certificate in Carl's process, again, it's about jurisdiction. We're always in UK PLC. Yeah, from Truth Talks. Carl he does the limited company process. Yeah. So again, that's about understanding jurisdiction.
Okay. Well, I definitely find
on your pauper, in your passport. We all know the birth certificate, but the birth certificate it's crown copyright. You don't even, it's nothing to do with you, really. But the box, you see the 10 or 17 on your birth certificate. In Carl's process, you're always meant to take that back, to take the name back, trademark it, so they can't use it. You register your name as a company in England and Wales, because Companies House is in a different jurisdiction. It's in England and Wales, not UK PLC, because your boat, your ship, you're classed as what we call a purser. So a purser is a slave on a ship. That's your P in your passport. So we're all slaves on our own ships, yeah? So take the Monopoly board as an example. We're all pushing around the boat or the shoe or the dog and not realising actually that we're the banker. But we're in their jurisdiction, so they class us as their property, because our silence, silence is the necessary consent for them to act.
Yes.
Yeah, because their system is presumptions, assumptions, tacit and hearsay. That's how that whole place works. So if you want to kind of, go into England and Wales and, you become a director of that's basically you docking your ship, taking the name back as a limited company into England and Wales. So now you're a director of your ship, and they can't push it around and use it. You're no longer a purser or a slave on it. There's a lot more to that process, but Carl's in Dark Matters, and you can find him online anyway on YouTube, but he has a space in on the website. So there are things that you can do.
Yeah, I'm definitely.
It's interesting.
There's some fantastic resources in Dark Matters and all that you do. We'll talk about that a bit later. I'm just trying to. I know so many like friends of mine who just get confused at the first step, and I'm trying to give a really 101 introduction to the law. And what I'm trying to get at is that we've got all the. Earlier, I was saying, if you think something's wrong, you can challenge it. It doesn't mean to say that you are right, but there are the legal system has all these levels to redress your particular case, like the jury system, which they're trying to hide, like the Constitution, which they're trying to hide. And I know there's a really good Mackenzie friend. I can mention his name because he's on YouTube. Mark Horn. I've seen him in action. He's very good. Yeah. He's so confident. Well, he's studied law all of his life, and he's read the Bible front to back. And I've seen him in a case in Teesside whereby he's confident that he knows that even the judges don't really know, or they're either bluffing or they don't really know the law, because he knows in the Constitution that if he keeps on rebutting until he gets to the highest level of our legal system, that he is right, because he really knows the Constitution well. So there is. The system is okay. We just have to use it properly. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, I've said that the system works pretty beautifully. It just doesn't work for us. I've seen Mark Horn's work, and I've seen what he's done. He's obviously challenged the council. I believe he because where's the obligation to pay it? Show it me. well, Liverpool Council couldn't, could they? And in the end, quite right, and he's doing amazing work. He knew how to move the court. So he got on what we call an estoppel in equity. I think they were chasing him for it was something ridiculous, like a £15, and it was something like £15 or something. But we never argue amounts. He said, "Where's the obligation?" And obviously he uses Constitution, the Bill of Rights, superior statute, because again, all men are equal under the law. So he went into court, knew how to move the court, got the court to order Liverpool Council, because they just kept adjourning it. They just kept, basically in the end, they still didn't turn up, because what they're going to do, they couldn't provide it, and they don't want to set that. So he got an estoppel in equity. So there's a certain amount of confidence you need to be able to go into a courtroom to be able to do that. Like I say, what I tend to work with is, I'm dealing with debt collectors. We're being the banker, really. Now, Mark Horn does what Mark Horn does. I do what I do. It's like what I say, it's like in any kind of solicitor or barrister, they're going to specialize, aren't they? I started spreading myself way too thin, and you start not being as good at, the thing that you're trying to be at. So I just said, right, I'm just going to focus on this, and that's what I'll do. What he's done is amazing. Now, the thing is, that system does work well, but it just doesn't work for us. Now, it's a universal principle. He who creates owns. It's a universal maxim. He who creates owns. Now, government didn't create man and woman. We are above government. We're above these corporate institutions. The thing is, people have just forgotten that, because we've just forgotten who we are. Your legal fiction can become quite, when you know how to use it, it's your monopoly piece in commerce. But the big thing for me is that we've just forgotten who we are, and we can be the banker. When we understand banking, commerce, what inflation is, these words are branded about, and people don't have a grasp on what it is. So the system does work, but it's corrupt, and it's corrupt at the core. It's corrupt to its language, and this is why the language of it is extremely important to in a stand, because it reveals the whole thing. It's a dark system. Now, if we take it back, then we can use it, again, for the people, by the people. But that's certainly not how it runs, at all. And that's the difference between the rule of law, the land, the air, and the water, as to the legal system. The legal system is statutes. It's statutory. What's a statute? It's a dead, lifeless thing. Acts. Well, an act is a good piece of theatre, but it needs our consent. It's the biggest basic that John Harris taught me, and the Baron in the early days. Legislation is not law. It is given the force of law by the consent of the governed. Just remember that. However, if we're holding on to their documents, and if we're staying silent, if we're accepting their presumptions and assumptions, then, we're not, like Mark Horn, you're not rebutting, you're not saying anything. Well, they just win by, tacit acquiescence. Our silence has always been the necessary consent. I think, what's that saying, Chris? Evil reigns when good men say and do nothing, and if we're not kind of standing up to it. Again, I'm very kind of cautious now of encouraging people to fight the system. Hence why Mark Horn does a lot of the court auditing, doesn't he? Because that's one of his angles, to try and pull these judges up on the things that they are not doing. And like you say, probably some of them have maybe a little tad clueless. I mean, magistrates are just magistrates, They don't really know what they're doing. They're just instructed by the clerks of the court, because administrative courts are just about money. But you can kind of, it's like guilty, not guilty, call a demeure, no case to answer. There's different ways of, like, and there's, I put a load of information about that the other day, in on the website at Dark. It's just doing it, though, is another thing, and people who have that skill, like Mark, and it's absolute 100% fair play to him. I stick outside the courtroom now. Some of my wins, some of my failures, but
there is a lot of
be the banker. That's what I say. Learn how to discharge debt.
Yeah, be the banker. You mean just explain that a bit more. Be the banker. Yeah. What do you mean?
So, like I say, a lot of the things, if we're fighting the system, trust me, it's a Rubik's Cube. That there's certain principles that underpin it. But like, I know I interviewed Laura Nina, a while back, who does a lot of, fighting, and they do great, but to me it feeds it, because, but then I'm coming at it from a very deep spiritual angle in that, my interest for people is to free them from the shackles of debt. Your mortgages, your credit cards, the stress of the bailiff on the door, that's my passion, should I say, for being a complete nerd about this, because that's how we are split. You are a slave, Neo, and it's done by debt in this, unless and for those creating that awareness of that system and shining that light on it, and actually going into the courts and taking that on, all for credit and play to them. I'm not putting that down in any way, shape or form, but for me, I think it's just easier to box a little bit smart. But again, that's in my arena, that's with debt, that's not in family law, or but it's so corrupt to the core, as we know, like family courts are about child trafficking in that sense, and about pilfering trust. There's the social services are the SS. There's no benefit to that. But if we're not looking after our children, if we give the education of our children over to the state, and the state now is the parent, because we don't understand what it is that we're doing, then that's what that doctrine of parens patriae is. Well, then we're not taking responsibility for ourselves. We're not expressing any kind of trust in that. So all this information is great, but knowledge and information without being able to apply it is kind of, I wouldn't say useless, but and if we all work together, then great things can be achieved. But like I've said, not everybody is ready to do it. That's what being sovereign is. It's of the mind, it's of the spirit, it's of the heart. It ain't a piece of paper. So if we're not acting responsibly, if we're not, because we're classed as naughty children in the, system, and we're all running around promising to pay stuff.
It's interesting what you say there about the social services and the courts. No, the family courts. That's fine. Not social work. Let me just say there are a lot of very good social workers.
I'm sure that there are. Yeah. You can be my bouncer there, Chris. I always say things like that, but I'm sure that there are. But the other thing is, I'm sure there's lots of good policemen and women. But the thing is, if you're part of that machine, unfortunately, you're part of that matrix, and you are a minion of it. You're complicit in it. And I'm sure that some people do good work, because I know people who do good work in those arenas. So yeah, you're completely correct. They're not all bad apples, and sometimes
Yeah, but this you've touched on the family courts there, so I think there is an issue there that we have to address, right? I know I start to skate on thin ground here, but I've seen with my own eyes, my own experience of what actually goes on, and we've got a guy in Teesside. He's known as Rangi. He's the guy who is challenging the family courts at the moment, and he's got thousands of people following him. It's Mark Horn that is supporting him in his actions, and what he's found is that there are not all social workers, but there's a certain element of them are going into these family court rooms, and they're presenting false evidence to the churches, and the public don't get to see what goes on, and they it seems to me, this is just my opinion, right? But no, it's what I've observed, right? And I've known someone that's gone missing, and her child went missing. I don't know what became of them, but once you get caught in the family court system, they don't want to let go. They themselves are chasing what they see as the low hanging fruit, the easy targets for them. So it would be people who are homeless, people who are like drug addicts, people who are whatever, or not just them, but they start with whoever they can get, because there's this financial incentive within the system to get children, right? To break up families and get children, and there are these some small elements within the councils that will see that there's a lot of money to be made in bringing children into the care system, which is good for their little internal market, but in terms of like justice in the world we want to live in, it's terrible. There's been a film released this week, I think it was, called Sound of Freedom. I don't know if you've heard about it, but it's playing on my YouTube feed every time I watch something. About a true story about some guy who in America who saw this going on. He couldn't get the military. He couldn't get the governments to go out and do these things. He had a calling from God, and so he went out and got these children and got them back. A true story. So awakening in this now.
I mean, the thing is with it is difficult, isn't it? Because now everyone's arguing about whether it's real, whether it's not real. This is the difficulty with these narratives, and and without going too deep, because I know you want to kind of keep it fairly practical, but what I try and say to people is, when you do deconstruct the language, when you do understand gematria, numerology, alchemical kind of decodes in things, it all follows a code. Everything follows a code. So we're being sold all these narratives. Just we're in a movie. We're in the Truman Show. So what is it you want to believe in? Because the whole system is confidence, faith, and belief. So if the system's got you fighting it, that's a narrative. If the system's got you looking at Trump to come and save you, that's a narrative. They have the whole child trafficking thing. I mean, is that's why they're being exposed, because it's the time to expose it within that narrative. I'm not trying to upset anybody, but Mel Gibson, if you've seen his film company, it's an eye in it, it's an icon. So people are saying, oh look, he's part of it, it's just another distraction. But let's face it, human trafficking of children is a $38 billion industry in America. Now, you're not telling me that the powers that be don't know about it. It is our global economy, or a huge part of it, just as war is. So it's not like the Clinton Foundation, is it, shipping in art containers, because that's how they allegedly they bring these children in via Epstein Island and varying things like that. Now, I'm not saying that's awful, and we know that it goes on, and this blood sacrificing and stuff like that. But it is also, I do believe that the dark exists to kind of show us what we're not, and hence the dark of the law and the legal system, because it's designed to lose us. It's designed to suck our energy. That's exactly what it's designed to keep us looking at it. And if we're busy looking at that, then we're not creating our own stories and narratives over this way. But that's why I'm saying to people, you can use trust law to protect your assets, be of the world, not in it. It's not that, not to pay attention to it, but it's their movie, it's their narrative. And the way we break the matrix is to stop feeding it. But people aren't quite ready for that leap yet. And I get that, maybe some people are, but there are practical things to do.
I like that. You pleased me a little bit there. I'm going into like a narrative. Look, could come back out of it because there's a lot of negativity there which can bring us down and suck us into it. But at the same time, there are practical things we can do, and if we do them in our own life and enough of them do it, then we'll make this world a better place. So like you were saying about trust. Now, I'm in the process of wanting to put my house in a trust, right? And voices around me say, "Oh, what's the point? Because when you're dead, you're dead. So what? Whatever like that." But look at this on a quantum level, right? It goes to the state and it feeds that massive monster that is doing all this horrible stuff. So, by here in the now, getting that sorted out. And that won't happen in the future. I'm making the world better today, now. Is that right?
Yeah, because what I say to people is, keep fighting the system, and like I say, there are some people doing some amazing work, and I don't put that down in any way, shape or form. My angle on it is, and that's what I do, I'm just in a corner of the world doing the thing that I do. But that's to do with creating that vanguard to that system. You want to remove yourself from that public arena and go into the private. It's like Andrew Tate, for example. Now, I love Andrew Tate. Now, anyone goes, "Oh, he's an actor." we're all actors. Shakespeare said it. We're all actors on the stage. The world is a stage and we it's mere players. So what I'm saying is to people, right? Well, what does Andrew Tate say? I don't own an £18 million mansion in Romania, but I have use of it. I don't own a yacht, but I have use of it. I don't own 18 Bugattis, but I have use of them. Now, he's telling you, because own nothing, control everything. Now, Henry Ford said that, Mayor Rothschild, show me the man who makes the country's money, and I care not who makes its laws. The system now that we're in is banking and commerce in that first jurisdiction, obviously. Then you're into maritime, then, where the judge is the banker, and then, you're really into that ecclesiastical side of it and the Talmud and etc. But really, the things that we all deal with on an everyday level, unless going to push things, and equity and trust is the vanguard to that system. It's what they use, and they've moved property, like you say. Well, we can all just say, oh well, you're dead, what does it matter? But if we're not if we're not feeding that system, because we actually know how to move property through trust law, can use equity, as the higher body of law, which, goes into chancery court, which is where you kind of, if you're going to go down that route, if you want to collapse the trust, etc., and so on, that higher jurisdiction, that's where you've got to push things. So it's understanding equity and trust, and people don't have to spend 15-hour days learning equity and trust, but they just have to, if you can get that basics and understand how banking works, because really the whole system operates, it's either a trust or a promise to pay. That's it. And we don't have an ability to pay because they sold all, the gold standard, it's all gone. But they gave us these credit accounts, and basically we've just forgotten that we are creditors and that we can offset and discharge. So be the banker, yeah. So if you've got, we know how, gas, basically gas, electric, utilities, council tax, all these things that are being offered to us as services are being offered to us via the security trustee, what we call the security trustee, which is the Bank of England. Yeah. So we are actually beneficiaries. We're talking about trust titles, even over, creditor-debtor relationships. We're talking about the movement of titles. And really, we are the beneficiaries. But what we're doing is, in our ignorance, we're gifting over our wealth. They're asset stripping us. We're gifting it over to them in our ignorance. And then they'll, there's two sets of books, like any criminal mafia keep hold of, they've got, different sides of the ledger. So, we're creating the credit, we're gifting it to them. They're, securitizing it, doing exactly what they all do with it, whilst leaving us a debt on this side of the ledger. We're actually the security trustee. We should be instructing them as agents. The banks are just high street agents. Utilities are just government billing agents. They're just agents. We have the higher position. We are beneficiaries. So we should be discharging and offsetting things rather than paying. But, they're always getting us to repay something, and that's the double dip, because we've already discharged them from our credit accounts ultimately. So we're adding to the national debt. As debt slaves, we're going into work jobs or persecutions to pay something back or repay it. When it's already been discharged anyway, we should be instructing the trustee. They have the fiduciary capacity, not us. But, know thyself. They don't want us to know that, because they don't want us to start using the Bills of Exchange Act, because that's what they use. But, Lord Denning says a promissory note is to be treated as cash. So we just have to start learning the rules of the game, and then we know the rules of engagement. But, this has been hidden and taken from us, and we are these debt slaves, paying these death pledges, these mortgages, or repaying it, paying it twice. And it's a win-win for the banks. Because if you default, they want to make you as sick as they possibly can, as stupid as you possibly are. And then really, if you can't afford, to repay that mortgage because they've whacked inflation up to a ridiculous degree and they're putting the mortgage rates up and blah, blah, blah. It's an asset. That's what they're coming for. They're coming for an asset sweep. And they don't want your physical house. They want the piece of paper. But if we're still thinking that we're debtors and that we need to repay something that's already been discharged technically at source, then they're profiteering by deception. They're enriching themselves at our expense, and this is the kind of awareness of things that is so key and important to shine the light on this stuff. And that's what I do, but also to give people a remedy to be able to kind of discharge and offset this stuff. Because that's what we should be doing. Then the national debt comes down. There's no austerity, but they don't want us really doing that, Chris, because we know that, banking's a Ponzi scheme at best, and it's all going to go down. That's what the reset is. But it's also a spiritual reset without going in, into that. It's not just a financial reset. It's the reset of time. Because time's the currency, really. It's keeping them distracted, not looking inward, constantly looking outward, constantly being stressed. They want us alive until about 70, because I don't know if people know this, but trust law works in those cycles, 70-year cycle. So then when you're dead, they can, they don't want you alive past that, because they're not pilfering your trust, but they can cream all the interest off. So everyone who's ever died ever, the pilfer, can you imagine that? Just that amount of interest off those trusts, that goes into war, human trafficking. So back to your point, Chris, take as much back from them without fighting them, and that decreases that power that they begin to have, because you're starting to know who you are. Now, are we going to wake everybody up to it? Are they ready for it? Probably not. However, we can lead by example. And if we're creating these communities over here, because we've freed people from those shackles of debt, then, then I can sleep at night, hopefully. That's my kind of goal, to help these communities. Like, as an example, I've got a lady with a £59,000 electricity bill. Well, we're going to discharge it. That's the way to do it. Why fight them? She says, oh, well, no, I want to fight them. It's the principle. And I went, yeah, but you are fighting them by discharging it, because you're bringing, you're bringing the tie to that national debt, or the slavery to that national debt down. You're taking the power back from banking. That's ultimately what it is. They don't want us to start really doing all that. But a few of us, well, they'll let that slide. We're not doing anything, that they've not been doing. It's the Bills of Exchange Act,
Yeah. I'm just finding that, sorry, just to change the topic. I'm just finding that people on Rumble are not, just drop the mouse in the bin. The live stream doesn't seem to be working on Rumble, but it should be working on Facebook and
I can't help you, Chris. Tech is,
no.
It ain't my middle name. I'm only messing.
I'm a little bit distracted. I'm just telling people on my phone that they can look on Facebook now.
I could just carry on.
Please do. Yeah, we will make sure.
Yeah. You know me, I can talk.
Yeah, no, that's great. This will get this. People will get who need to see it. We'll get to see it in any case. People will know I've publicised it enough. It's just sorry about these technical things. They're talking about like utility bills, right? Now 95 to 99% of people they can't get it in their heads that they've already paid for it through their trusts and everything, and they see that there's the water board, the gas company. They've got all this infrastructure there, and they're bringing it to our door. So they need paying for, do they not?
Yeah,
that's how I see it. But
it's a good one, because I do get asked, especially in the early days, and I have to say I'm probably somebody who's a little far gone really now. I was laughing the other day. I was saying, me trying to talk to people who were just getting, it was quite funny actually, because obviously I'm doing the podcast with Dark Matters, and we're going into all this esoteric code, all the language, really deep diving, all this stuff. So when people just ask me something simple, I'm going, it's like I have to kind of rewind, like I'm literally, there's probably people who do it far better than me with the crossovers. However, that said, it was always a thing that I got asked early on. So people kind of, this is how I used to explain it. So we've already paid for these services again and again and again and again and again. And actually, they're ours anyway. Government, there's two things of worth on this planet, as I say, on this plane, of this realm, whatever. We won't get into that. That's the Earth's resources and our sweat equity. Us. Who built those pipes? We did. Well, our men mainly, and that's why we have to, give the love to our our kings, the return of the king, we need to honor that. Who built the bridges? Mainly our men. Well, let's just say we did. We built them. Whose are those buildings that these governments and these corporate parasites are sat in? They're ours. We built them. So the fact is, take it back to, the first express trust deed of Pope Boniface and the Unum Sanctum, which I'm sure, people watching are aware of that. That was the Vatican basically coming along and declaring that they own this whole place. The whole of the earth, the planeti, they call it, a vessel in the sea of space. That's what the Vatican call it.
Yeah.
We own it, and now you're going to pay us to use it. And that's basically stood ever since. We would have been physical slaves before then, but, they learned to do it with, on paper, via banking, taxes, all this kind of stuff. So they give us a prison that we cannot see, taste, touch, hear, or smell. So they give us the illusion of freedom, so that we've got all these choices, but we've not. So everything that's been built, everything that's been run, we built it, it's ours. And now they're saying, this is ours, and you're going to pay us to use those things, So I would say take the Runcorn Bridge. It always kind of gets my goal. Who built that? We did. What did we build it with? The Earth's resources. Now, you've got to remember, you take it back to currency, fiat currency. Fiat means fake, So, we're all doing stuff for each other for free. Yeah. We all live in a utopia. We just haven't got the utopia. I stole that off Paul Webster. It's a brilliant line. So I give him a nod and a credit for that one. We live in a utopia without the utopia. So if you go and get your morning coffee, let's say not one of the big chains, but a nice local coffee shop, and you give cash, then you're just basically handing over. What is a £10 note? It's a promise to pay. It's not backed by silver or gold. It's no, we know this. So that person's gone and got those beans that are an Earth's resource, put their energy into going making it, and give it to you. Yeah. Forget the piece of paper. We're all doing everything for each other for free, but we have, the fiat monetary system is, as the Baron taught me, just confidence, faith, and belief. The whole system is confidence, faith, and belief. That is it. So, again, people go, oh yeah, but the pipes bring my water and it has to get clean, so we have to pay for that. No, we those guys are cleaning that water, but we're all doing it and it's been paid for so many times. He who creates owns. Do you remember we were talking about that? Well, who created government? Man created government. Government didn't create man. Those are our buildings. Those are for the people, by the people, and they've taken it and sold it back to us with everything. And when you're born, before we are birthed into, the system of maritime, we all have what's called an equitable share of the earth. Yeah. We all have an equitable share of it. So we all, I think under the, is it in the Bill of Rights? And somebody may correct me in this, but it's 5 acres, I think, every, man of Albion, every man and woman of Albion, because we're not in UK. The UK doesn't exist. It's a jurisdiction. It's a fiction, right? So men and women born on this good green earth, on this land, entitled to build a home, to grow food, to trade with your neighbour, as long as you don't cause any harm, injury, or loss, as the law of the land, as we agreed to those laws, because common law grew as precedent, it grew as case law, but it was superseded by the legal system and statutory jurisdiction, like say when the Judicature Act came in, because this is about, like we say, it's about fines, it's about just robbing us further, basically, as much as our, asset stripping us to an absolute hilt. And again, we are that chattel. We were put up, in the Doomsday Book. When the Norman French invasions came and they marched on the city of London, we are the stock. We always were. We are the Guayim, they call us. We are the cattle. We are the lifeless corpses, they call us. This is why they have a bull, the Manhattan Bull, outside of the the stock market, the New York stock market, because it represents the papal bulls. And it represents, the Taurus field as well, and very different things. So again, once we kind of break the system down to that degree, it's ours. But they're just charging us, and listen, the language again. It's a charge. It's an energy harvest.
So long as we don't, so long as we don't make joinder and go into contract, then they make a
Well, you know, and again, it's about using their own rules against them, you know. So say a lady I helped yesterday, she was getting the bailiffs on the door, you know, for this old council tax bill that had come. But it's Marston's at the door, you know, I'm not going to name any names of her, but, you know, it was Marston's haranguing her for this bill. Well, who are you? Marston's are a private company. I don't have a contract with you, do I? We've been instructed by, you know, Wigan Metropolitan Council. We have a liability order, and this is, you know, you do one-to-one with me. This is how I break it down with you. Well, you know, a letter from a private company you've no contract with, saying they've got a liability order, and liability means the ability to be lied to, saying, oh, we've got a liability order. Well, no, you sent me a letter saying you've got a liability order, but a letter saying you've got a liability order isn't a liability order, is it? And we all know, actually, you know, in the legality of the councils printing their own liability orders and their own warrants and all their own nonsense, you know, in league with the clerk of the court, you know, it's all fraud. But you know, she was when I you know, continued to kind of, you know, get some more information out of her, you know, she was a vulnerable adult. So right, okay, well, that's a win. You know, we challenge them in the notice, and we don't write letters, we write notices, as we know, because letters and emails can be ignored, and notice says take notice. So you know, they can't, you know, private companies have no source of authority from a council. You know, these things shouldn't be being outsourced by councils in that sense. It's all fraudulent in the way these documents have been, you know, whipped up anyway, you know, without getting into all the legalities of that. But I put that down in the notice anyway, just for shits and giggles, as we say. But really, as a vulnerable adult, they can't harass her under their own rules, so it has to go back to the council. So, you know, it's just being able to break down what it is that they're claiming, because everything that pops through your door is a letter of claim, really. There'll be claim. We can. You must. So all I do is go pick those things out, ask them some questions back. This is a vulnerable adult, send it back to the council. And we send that recorded delivery, and they, you know, we create the court of record, we inform the council, job's done. So each case is different, but when you start to be able to use their own rules against them, because they're public bodies, they have to follow their rules. We don't. We can make them follow their rules, but that's the trick.
I can see that. But like, for people who can't get their heads around that we have this authority and everything, they're not happy. I'm thinking of particular people in my mind at the moment. They're not happy until they see it confirmed back by them that they're happy and they're with you. So is there an alternative they can do whereby they can say, look, I just don't have this money, but I offer to pay this much. And that way they can get some confirmation, yes, we'll accept that for now, or something like that.
Well, it's still a contract, isn't it? I mean, the council are a municipal entity. They're a municipal corporation, ultimately. You know, they have a public front as the, you know, Manchester, the city, you know, Manchester County Council, what do they say? The city of Bolton, I can't remember. I've not had a council tax bill for a while, but whoever your council is, you know, they're a private company, so they don't have a contract. We know that they're all funded arms companies, you know, with the Lobos loans and all this. It all depends on what it is you want to do. You know, what I say is, rather than fight them, if it's a public liability, you know, then as a beneficiary, we should be discharging it. You know, so any public liability can be discharged. Again, it depends on who it is who I talk to, depending on the certain circumstances, the way I would kind of go in and battle it, really. Because like I say, with that lady, it was an easier way just to get them off the doorstep, because they're not allowed to do that, A, we know, but B, that, well, she's a vulnerable adult, job done, there you go. Same with some loans. You know, there was a lot of loans given out, and I help people with debt.
How do we see the confirmation that it's being discharged? How can they see the confirmation that it has been discharged so that they can have their peace of mind?
Well, you ask them for the settled account. That's what we get. We get the settled account. So say, you know, we just So say we've just discharged a debt with 18 grand with who was that with? That wasn't Marston's. What are they called? It's come right out of my head. Moorcroft. Moorcroft, with this process that we've been doing. So, the guy, and again, I won't mention any names, but he rang up Moorcroft and said, have you accepted, the settlement? And he recorded them saying, yes, we've processed it. Well, under the Bills of Exchange Act, he's got them on record saying that they processed the payment, the discharge. So under the Bills of Exchange Act, if a bill, if you've kept it for 72 hours, it's always 3 in legal terms. So if they've kept it, then it's a debt discharged. If they refuse it, then it's if you refuse the debt under the Bills of Exchange Act, then it's still classed as then it's settled. And again, what we do is we just need to evidence that. Now, sometimes they'll turn around. Remember, there's 2 sides, public, private. They'll keep coming, like launching stuff at you from the public because there's 2 sides of the ledger. So they'll settle it on the private side of the ledger, but they'll still say you owe this debt sometimes. And that's where we then have to, get into DSARs, which is a data subject access request. Data subject access requests are a really powerful tool if people don't know about those, because they reveal this concealment within all these trusts. And all these services, like I said earlier, they're all trusts in and of themselves. So, we are the beneficiaries of them. It's just that they're not telling us that. So we repay it. We go to work to earn fiat money to repay something that's already been settled. And like say with mortgages, if they go into default, it's a win-win for them because they just claim on the insurance as well. So, at the moment, and I don't want to say too much about it because, I've been attacked, first line of attack is discredit, and I've had it a lot. So we're keeping everything pretty much in the private. So if people do want to find more about, how to perhaps, deal with the mortgage company or loan companies or debt collectors, that, then come and have a chat with me in the private is what I would say. But because I am being, I can skip in a little bit, me, Chris. I've been a bit naive, like a little bit rainbows and bunnies, and people will come and try and chop my head off. And I won't name names, but I stand in honour, and I do it, but I'm doing it for my own site. I'm doing it in the private. We're even going to probably turn Dark Matters into a PMA, like completely remove it into the private. So these solutions and remedies are available. And like I said, this is just what I do. Like that guy with the family court taking that on. Well, wow, I won't go near a family court if you put a rocket up my bottom, because it's so corrupt. And those courts are closed, because they play on that it's, the Child Safety Act, isn't it? The Child Protection Act. But it's not that. It's so they can do everything, behind closed doors and not have that kind of, that public gaze on it, because that's what that's about. So, there's people doing amazing stuff. And like I say, I just do what I do and my stuff to do with debt, as well as the podcast and everything else, because I just love, that's my passion. I love all the law of the law and the occult. And, even getting into, like I say, the code of the matrix, because all you have to do is work that out. I say all. But, but again, be of the world, not in it. Take Michael Ubuntu, that guy who created the community kind of outside the jurisdiction in South Africa. Have you heard of him? Michael Tellinger.
Michael Tellinger.
Sorry, not Michael Ubuntu. Michael Tellinger did the Ubuntu. He created that, but he created it with fiat currency, yeah? So it's kind of like, it even says in scripture, and, it's your script. It's a great book. It's the greatest story ever told. But it says, you have, I think it's like 40 days or something to remove commerce from the mind. Yeah. So there's a transitional period that we all go through. Once we've woken up to what this beast of commerce is, to gently remove ourselves from it, and this is what I'm saying about, if you want to go and create a community over here, then there are ways and vanguards to protect it and take it out of their jurisdiction, and to box smart. Again, put that community into a trust, like Michael O'Byrne does with his UCT. It's always a trust within a trust. So that's how he works. You could have your own like individual, private family trust and put that into, if you trust the UCT, you can put it into his trust, and and he's another, he's a guy who does like awesome work. He's working with all the liens, isn't he? But they've come to chop his head off, because the difference between what we perhaps do is we don't go into a courtroom calling fraud on mortgages, because that is calling the system out. If you're discharging and offsetting and doing it in the private, that's a different egg. But fair play to them for going into the allegedly. I don't know if this is true, but I think they tried to poison him or something. I don't know. I shouldn't say that. Allegedly, let's add allegedly to that. So yeah, that's it. We stick our head so much above the parapet, and I've done it. Trust me, but there's a smarter way to play. Yeah, and I'm just doing it from the private now. So if people want to get me, they'll have to get me there. No more Telegram. I will do Telegram for a little bit longer, probably into early next year. But we all know in the end they'll probably come and take that. I don't do fear porn. I don't do it. If you're gonna what you focus on, you feed. So I'm pretty cheery about the whole thing, really. But knowledge is power, as cheesy as that sounds, and it is. And when you start to decode it all, then you can kind of see exactly the way it's going to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel a lot more confident now, what I know now than what I knew maybe 2 years ago or something. And I'm quite confident. The difficulty I have is family and the people around me trying to bring them with me. We've got to pitch it sort of right, and it's a difficult process. But I'm working on it now. I just want to come back again and just say I'm really sorry that this didn't go live because I don't know. I think it was because I had to. I've sent an invitation to other speakers, and then I had to update it because I messed up the original schedule. And anyway, I want to say sorry to who I was hoping to bring along. Victoria Sovereign, good friend.
Oh yes, I love Victoria. We're thinking the same woman.
Yeah, she introduced you personally to me, and she's been and giving talks and things. And my other good friend, Jennifer Roberts, who's very spiritual, and she's done. Can you see the little logo in the corner that says truth?
Cool.
She designed
I like the
design now, and she does tarot cards, and she's
cool.
she's very spiritual person. Anyway, they're my two good friends who are like I would love to have brought into this conversation, but I learn by my mistakes anyway. So
as we all do. Don't worry about it. No, it's fine, honestly. Yeah. But I love Victoria. She's a really strong, beautiful woman. I know her. She's awesome.
Yeah. She runs a Ministry of Truth, a Telegram group, a website, and she's very spiritual, very powerful. And anyway, so there were people I'm just thinking about at the moment. Now, I'd like to take this opportunity to now delve into like another little area that we can talk about. And I know you've got a lot of an interest. You like your science fiction, and you like your movies and things like that. I've just started watching the latest Black Mirror episodes. They're horror.
Right.
They're not exactly. I wouldn't recommend them for everyone, but I enjoy peeling back these layers of reality, and what you talk about, what you're saying about the legal prisons that we're caught in. These are like, these are within our realm of what we can see and understand. But there's a lot more, which is what is called occult, which goes back a long way, and it's all to do with our conditioning, our history, our what they teach us in our schools, the academic system, and religion. It goes way long back, and in all of my 62 years, it's taken me this lifelong of mine to sort of slowly unpick it all. Every day, every week, I'm sort of, there's nothing surprises me anymore in this reality that we're in. So anything new information, I don't dismiss it, but I'll try and calibrate with everything else I know. And this right now, you've got a lot of you reference the Matrix quite a lot, and you like this
yeah,
world.
yeah. You
So-
can't not, can you, really? Whether it's the truth, I don't know, but it's definitely.
No, I know. If nothing else, it's a metaphor.
Yeah.
But we kind of like Victoria's helped me a lot with this. I understand this a lot, but we're projecting our reality. We're projecting our life. We're playing the hero role within this simulation, and wherever we get in this simulation, there seems to be more obstacles and more challenges come. No matter where we go, they just come on. But this, do you feel like nothing is too overwhelming that we can't overcome it?
I think that is exactly what, like you stated, we live in a duality reality. So where there's good, there's bad. Where there's hot, there's cold. Where there's male, there's female. Where there's light, there's dark. And for me, I think once you've kind of transmuted your inner dark and you've gone inward and done the inner work, like you say, then what we're projecting begins to change, because these programs are background programs, basically. Demons, they call them in computer programming. If we're in a simulation, as in the Matrix, they call background programs that run the computer daemons, which is DAEMONS. So we all have our background demons, our background programs subconsciously running our shows. And which is why it's so important to the Matrix or the Demiurge or Yaldabaoth or whatever you want to go and call that controls this realm. And you can get into like Lucifer and Jesus are pretty much the same person. They're both called the morning star. Morning is death. They're here to show us that this is a kind of hell, and you are already dead, really. It's like what Morpheus says to Neo, in the Matrix. You think that's air you're breathing, because really, I know, because and you've got to think about the legal system. It's all the language of the dead. The English language is the language of the dead. Everything that they call us, the walking dead. That's what like we were talking about the stock. They call us the lifeless corpses. They class us as dead. So again, it's breathing life back into our vessel. But when you do the inner work, as perhaps cheesy as that's saying, but then you start to project a different movie. You're starting to become lucid in the dream. So again, if they're keeping you fighting the system and you're not doing the inner work, then you trust me, your demons are still running those background programs. They're still running that show, because the subconscious and the conscious mind that's the veil came down when we made the choice. That's in you get into scripture, you get into all those kind of ancient texts. Lucifer was the light bringer. He fell from heaven, but he made the deal, allegedly, say like the law of one, and we've got an interesting guest hopefully coming soon on the podcast in relation to that. And he was actually a positive sixth density entity who came down to offer the choice to us, and we chose, and the veil came down, veil, evil. Yes. And they've been here being as dark as possible ever since, and they've kind of outstayed the welcome a bit now. They've got a bit carried away, Chris. So, but we've forgotten who we are, So again, Jesus came down to pay the debt, especially even in trust law terms, and we've forgotten who we are, It's all metaphor, it's all allegory, it's all narrative, which is why they know, like I said earlier, before I went off on one, as I do, they control the narrative, they control the story, the dream state. Then they control consciousness, and you hijack consciousness. The hijacking of our consciousness is the Matrix, and that the Matrix has a code. It's not of nature, in that sense. What you're getting into who we are, and that's what I'm kind of really interested in. And then you get into the matter.
Yeah, and of course, this day and age with AI, predictive programming, there's a lot of and psychology. There's a lot of stuff that can plant in our minds unconsciously to control us.
It's all language. It's all trickery. It's all symbols. It's all alchemical code. It all has a code, the Matrix, to it. And when you decode, then misinformation, information, all these paradoxes, they all start to resolve. You don't want to fight anything anymore. demon, da comes from the Latin to divide. So as soon as they divide our consciousness, divide us from one another, divide, when really actually we're just energy condensed to a slow vibration. That's what creates matter. That's what gives this illusion that this place is real, but we're just spirits in meat suits, really, playing the game of Earth. And people have just kind of forgotten. But we're here to experience that, and I could talk. It goes very deep. But even in scripture, this idea of 666, it says 666 is the number of the beast. Yeah. Well, 6 is 4 and 2, the answer to the meaning of life, the universe, and everything. 4 plus 2 is 6. 6 is the number of the beast. 6 is the imperfect. But again, in numerology, it's just hijacked. But really, the book of Revelation says, let him reckon the number of the beast, and reckon comes from the Greek word to calculate or solve. Matter 42, 666, the dark, it's here for us to reckon with, to calculate, to solve the puzzle. And the puzzle is, you just need to remember who you are. You don't need to fight the system. You just give it some love. Hug the system.
Yeah, sure.
You don't have to like it, but you've got to love it.
Positivity for it to come back.
Well, don't get toxic positive. I mean, be a warrior. It's the middle way, Chris.
Do no harm but take no shit. Yeah, that's
what
it says. Yeah.
Better to be a warrior in the garden than a gardener in a war. You've got to clip your bonsai, do your calligraphy, but when the war comes, get ready to pick up your swords. And that's not for everybody, but I'm a bit more the middle path. I'm a high priestess. I might be a lunatic for all anybody knows. Don't listen to me. Do your due diligence, do your homework. That's another thing that's got us into this mess. Listening to things that are outside of yourself. There's a savior program. Did you know that they've? I need to double check this, so don't quote me verbatim, anybody. But they've actually found the worship gene. We've been genetically modified, or humans have along the way somewhere. They've implanted us with a worship gene, so that we're worshiping things outside of ourselves all the time. Like, do as you're told, sit down, shut up. And I'm going, bit weird. We've come out of that program and it didn't wash. And even though apparently they've literally found the gene that makes us do it, you've got to kind of question, where did that come from?
Yes, that delves into genetic modification, which we won't go too far in that part.
Take transhumanism. I mean, it's out there, isn't it? It's on the doorstep, and Baal, or what do they call it? Baphomet is androgynous, so that's why they want men as women, women as men, blah, 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 everyone confused. But there was a US Supreme Court case where basically, they tried to patent a human. I've got the case. I'll put it up in Dark Matters, actually. It's quite an interesting read. But they tried to patent a human, and the judge said, you can't patent humans. They're naturally occurring to the earth. Now, they can enslave us via the birth certificate. Well, the birth certificate is just a piece of paper at the end. But if they're injecting people with mRNA, gene-altering therapy, well, that's what they went and did, because then you're transhuman. You're not human anymore. Now, if you're transhuman, then you can be owned by a corporate. You are corporate property. That's how they look at it. You can be patented, that word. And then, follow that guy with the dicky ball. What's he called? Dr. Christopher something. Follow the patents, follow the money, and you'll find exactly who's behind all of it, as we know, or don't know, some people, I suppose. But it's a very interesting case to read.
Yeah, well, I'm glad I've not been genetically altered. Okay, I wanted to know, you touched on something a bit earlier that it's always confused me. I've never quite got to the bottom of it, and I think you touched on it, and maybe you could help enlighten me on this. This thing about Jesus came to save. He paid a ransom or something like that, and I hear Christians tell me this story all the time, and I don't know what it means. It means something to them, but I don't get it. How can someone have come and sacrificed himself and paid our debt? I don't get it, but they see it as something, it means something to them. I don't.
It's the original sin, isn't it? The fall from grace. One of the ideas is that we are the fallen angels, because Angel, Elohim, Israel, Isis, Ra-El. That's where the Israel comes from. There's a difference between the landmass Israel to the state of Israel. A state is a contract. It's a fiction. That's why you get the state of Florida, because state of Florida means state without Florida. That's why you get the city of Manchester, because of in legalese means without. So the city without Manchester, they're constantly taking us off the land. So, you've got to remember that we were given dominion over the land, the air and the water, because we are creations of the creator. Yeah. So the creator, do you remember what I was saying earlier? He who creates owns. Well, we don't even own this. We, from dust we came, from dust we shall, go back, really. But we do own our souls. And basically, yeah, what was the question again? I've lost my plot.
Right. Jesus died for our sins.
Oh, Jesus, that was it. Sorry. So the way I look at it, we were given the land, the air, and the water. Yeah. So we have dominion over that. So they took that from us, the Vatican. They took it all from us. The Roman, it goes back thousands of years. But, basically what it makes the creator the settler, the settler of the trust. If you're talking in trust terms, you have a grantor or a settler, it's called, depending if you're in America or here. You have the trustee at the top of the apex, and you have the beneficiaries who benefit. Now we're the beneficiaries of the earth. The creator gave us the earth to be to have the use of, and that's what I'm saying about equity. And equity, the people who that's why you want to split the legal and equitable title. You have the higher claim as a beneficiary of equity. Yeah. So we're beneficiaries. Is for holding, we then hold it for our children, and on it goes. So the trustee bit, when Jesus came down, because we've forgotten who we are, and we just keep paying debts and repaying debt with debt. The idea is that he becomes the trustee, so he comes down to settle the debt. He comes down to pay the debt, the original sin, and have that fiduciary capacity, to free us as beneficiaries to kind of. Oh, it's me doggy. To kind of, so we can go back to being the children of the creator that we truly are on the land, because that's what they took from us from the triple crown of Baal. The first thing they took was the crown of the land. Yeah. So, and then, that's why we have soles of the feet. That's why you get standing in a courtroom, because, the soul is supposed to be connected to the land. The land is actually our body. As well, they took that from us allegedly. It's a presumption, but it stood because no one's rebutted it. But so basically, the sign of the cross, is Jesus being the trustee and paying the debt that we've for mankind's fall from grace. If I'm getting that correct, but that's how I kind of look at it. But
because right, okay. I think I'm starting to understand that a little bit now.
Because the trustee pays, so Jesus paid the ultimate sacrifice, and this is why it's scripture is an allegory. Again, it's a quantum, it's codified book. It is the greatest story ever told. So Jesus walking upon the maritime waters, was Jesus walking, Jesus walking on the water. Sorry, was Jesus walking upon the maritime water. Jesus overturning the tables of commerce in his father's temple is us learning how to remove commerce from ourselves. To we're classed as consumers. We're it's another contract, consume, confine. So again, it's the confine and the matrix of our own minds. Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, didn't he? He was raising the dead fiction, so he was drawing the distinctions. So I see it as all as an allegory. Again, Yahweh, the original God of the Old Testament. He's not mentioned. They removed the name of the creator and replaced it with Lord in capitals. Now we all know what capitals means. It's the language of the dead, but Lord in Hebrew means Baal. So that book's it's not the real original text. You've got to kind of read between the lines. It's allegory, metaphor, and chord. Like I always say, this is a good example, Chris. Can you imagine, like thousands of years in the future, and they perhaps listen to a recorded conversation of us talking, maybe Northerners, and I said, "Oh, there's not enough room in here to swing a cat, John or Chris." Is there? And then can you imagine, like years later, it was written down, and therefore Carly did behold say. That there's not enough room to swing her cats in here. Oh, look, and then people would read it literally and go, we were meant to swing cats. Somebody get me a cat. And that's how ridiculous, because people don't understand etymology. They don't understand what they're looking at or reading it, and we're taught and brainwashed to read it literally at school, like these things, literal things.
Yeah,
and the language back then was very different to the language and the phrasing that we have now.
I think I get that now. Like Jesus is the perfect man, the perfect role, the perfect kind of example of how Christ rises within us. And they say, it comes back again. Yeah, Jesus, the Christ rises again in our consciousness. But of course, religion, with like you say, metaphor and taking words literally, have taken it that there really was a person in like 2,000 years ago who, well, yeah, there's those Christians, and then there's I think I get that now.
If Jesus was an actual real person, maybe he was, maybe he wasn't, but it's all they're all stories. We don't kind of really know. We can all point, truth is a very subjective thing, and we're all so busy arguing and dividing ourselves, trying to find out who's right, then we've completely missed the point. There's a difference between Christians, which is of the system, to somebody who follows the path of the Christ. And there's a lot of, that's why you get into like studying like Gnostic texts, and there's a whole host of a deep dive in studying Gnosticism and that more kind of magical, occult hidden kind of elements of who Jesus was, and Mary Magdalene and the Sophia and the Christ. And for me, like the Christ is, and Victoria, my friend, it's the kingdom is within. It says that in scripture, and that's why they're constantly getting us with the worship gene and making us look at all these outside narratives that we're projecting, when really, the kingdom of God is within and God, I stay away from the word God because it has 7, 10, it's such a subjective word, and in scripture it has loads of different meanings depending if it's got a capital G, lowercase g. You've got to read it with what's called a concordance, because it's all codified. So again, it's all been edited and bastardized. We're not getting the real thing. So it's kind of like, again, you stop paying attention to all these outside narratives. Everyone's waiting for an outside savior, when really no one's coming to save you. The only person that can save you is yourself, and that's by, healing your own shadow side and becoming, like I say, Christ and Lucifer are the same. They're both classed as the morning star. They're both in duality, the same character, really. Lucifer came down and brought the veil. Jesus came down and paid the debt. So they're both illuminating us to the nature of this place. And it's just, they're just trying to get us with transhumanism and turning men into women, and they're just trying to get us into another layer of dreaming, so that we don't go back to what is real, really. And I use that word very loosely, but which is what we can sense, what we can, in being in tune with nature and going back to the Garden of Eden. The Christian Catholic Church. I mean, the Catholic Church is Rome. Just end of that, it just went underground, and they called, Caesar became Pope.
Romans,
and it's been like that ever since. And we're all fighting. And the Son of God, it's all sun worship when you get down to it. Krishna. That's why they all have the halos around the head, because the sun in all ancient stories, it's the same story. Death, rebirth, ascension. The crucifixion, the solar cross. Because our logos, and logos comes from the Greek word, it means word, is the sun. It's sun worship. The moon is actually masculine in ancient texts, so that's another inversion and a lie that used to go and set behind the Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai. The moon was masculine, and actually in ancient texts, if you want to take it even deeper, they don't mention it. So you're getting into what is that? Is it some kind of artificial construct? But anyway, don't get me going. I'll go right off the charts with it.
That's great.
It's a deep dive.
It is. Right. Okay, then. So I just want to say I really, thank you for coming on, and I know it was a long time sort of trying to organize this, but I'm really, thank you very much for coming on and illuminating me and the people who follow what we try to do in Teesside. Tell us a bit more about what you are doing this summer, and where you were going, and where we can find your work.
So you can find me now. Obviously, my Telegram group's still up, and I'm sure, like I say, Chris, you'll put the link down. But the best place to get me now is on Dark Matters, which is www. 666 which is darkmatters.contact. Like I say, it's a private group, but you can just send a request to join and in your pop. Like I said, there's lots of different resources in there, and we've only just started populating it. I mean, my files section in Telegram, I didn't realize how good it was, really, because I've been reading through them all to put them in order onto the new site. So it's all nice and bonny, it's all ordered. There's like course content, and people can come and read everything. We're going to be doing lives in there, you know, all kinds of stuff. I'm going to be doing the Dark Matters podcast. I'm doing the Inverted Realities podcast. That's all going in there. So yeah, just come and join me there. And if you've got kind of debt things, feel free to pop into Dark Matters or email me. Ultimately, that's illuminateandelevate@protonmail.com is probably the best one to get me at the moment there. Right. But yeah, so I'm doing a few festivals. I'm doing the Shine seminars in West Bryon 7. I think that's the 4th, 5th, and 6th of August. That's with Eli from the Shine. It's going to be some big names there. It's going to be really good fun. And then I'm with Drake, Michigan. I think I'm 19th and 20th. That's in Leyland near Charlie. We've got a festival there, and then I think it's Carry On Camping, isn't it, Chris? At the end of August, are you going? Yeah. Carry On Camping.
Well, I don't know. I definitely want to get to at least 2 or 3 of them.
August is a big month. It's a big month for me. I've just been so busy to getting all the other stuff ready. I've like literally hibernated in my little hobbit hole. But I'm popping out the other side of it for August.
Really good. I was at a really good one about 4 weeks ago called Conscious Camp. It was in in North Wales.
Yeah.
And Dave Murphy was there. He's an enjoyable.
I like his work on genealogy and stuff is really, really good. I've watched a lot of his stuff. Very fascinating stuff.
I definitely want to.
I got this one from allegedly Dave. God comes from the word Gadriel, because it's all El, you know, angels, Gadriel, Gabriel, Ezekiel, Elohim. You see, Elohim means the powerful ones in Scripture. It's not God singular; it's God plural. You see, so but that's me with that one. But I think Dave calls it the God of War. You know, the God of this place, the God of War. It's very interesting stuff. And genealogy, you know, some really interesting genealogy. It goes back to the 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 tribes of Satan. You know, again, it's all cord. It's all the great story, and every story needs a hero, and every story needs a protagonist. You know, and that's what we're in. It's a dream of narrative.
He talked about how, you know.
I think you decide. I'm back.
And, and he had this image of him like looking into a microscope and seeing himself looking into a microscope, and he looks around, and then he goes into the whatever he's looking at further, and then again he sees himself. Oh, I wouldn't say that right. First of all,
I get it.
You get it, yeah. So like time it's like a fractal, just sort of like ongoing, and time is like going into it and coming back out. And
it's interesting that we all get to that point, because it is all fractals and it's all time. What gives matter legitimacy? Time is the currency of the elites. It's not. They don't give a crap about fiat currency, or they just want to slave you on paper. It's about time. It's about energy. It's an energy harvest. It's a loose. This is why they get you to vote, because it's a vault. That's why they charge you. That's why, you know, it's all in the language. But when we kind of transcend time, when we kind of start to see through that, then, you know, and what transcends time, it's love, you know. Cheesily, it's love, man. Love or fear, like Bill Hicks says, pick one, choose one, love or fear. And that's coded into this matrix, love or fear. And it's just a choice. Hard one sometimes with all that heavy programming, but that's why it's so important to deprogram, to debunny.
Okay, we're going to leave it there then, I didn't set up my intros and outros, but I want to outro with just a clip of the Better Ways conference I went to the other week, a couple of months at the beginning of June. I met some really interesting people there as well. But thank you, Carly. I look forward to seeing you this summer somewhere sometime.
We'll bump into each other, hopefully. That'd be cool. Yeah, and thank you for having me.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks. Okay, bye now.
Bye.
We follow the science.
These are safe and effective products.
Global energy systems, food systems, and supply chains will be deeply affected.
5G is going to underpin the digital economy.
Central bank digital currencies.
Individual carbon footprint tracker.
I don't want you to be hopeful. I want you to panic.
We can hack human beings.
The time is right for an international treaty or other legally binding instrument.
Free will, that's over.